Hello and welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to have a look at widget properties. I've looked at this a little bit already in the widget properties quick guide where I took a look at the feature and quickly showed you how to go about implementing widget properties in your games in Crayta. In this guide I'm going to go into a little bit more depth, so it's perfect for anyone who wants a little bit more context and a little bit more understanding about how powerful widget properties really are. I'm going to do it in the context of this piece of artwork in front of me. So in the lobby of Tutorial Springs, I'm going to add some artwork and a little bit of a description underneath about what they represent. And this is a perfect opportunity for widget properties. Other great opportunities that you might see for widget properties are things like signage around your game, or instructions for your players in how to play your game, and in context instructions, so just above interactable things, including a widget just above them showing the player how to interact with them and that sort of thing. So let's look at adding some artwork to this little gallery in the lobby of Tutorial Springs. So to start with, I've been through some of the games that I want to add the artwork from, and I've taken screenshots. Then I've uploaded those screenshots into create.crayta.com. I've gone to my UI images, and then I've clicked upload new UI image, and I've selected the images that I wanted to upload, and I've waited for those to be approved, and they're now ready to use in my Tutorial Springs gallery. So returning back to Tutorial Springs, let's investigate these widgets over here. We've got this frame, which is just a picture frame mesh that has been scaled up a little bit. And then within the frame, we've got this widget here, which I have used the size 192 by 130. And that's going to store my artwork. And then underneath, I've got this little sign here, which is just going to be a little bit of spiel about what this artwork is. So I need to make it so that I can add an image to this art widget here. Now the easiest way to add an image to the art widget is by setting the background image of a div. And if you're not sure about what bindings and things are possible and open to you, then definitely check out the Coherent Game Face documentation. You can find all of the different bindings that you can use. There's some there, there's plenty around on this page, which is the data binding overview page. And for the image that I'm going to use, I'm going to change the data bind style background image URL. So that's the responsive tag, that responsive attribute that I'm going to be using inside my HTML tag to show up the image. But before we do that, let's add a property so that we can put in the image URL from our bank of images and create.crayta.com. So I'm going to find the properties section, which is within the between the head and closing head. You'll find this little properties bag here. I'm going to add my property in here, and I don't actually need text size because this widget's just going to be that image. So I'm just going to change the name of this to be image URL. The type I'm going to change to string, and then I'm going to remove the default. If I save this widget now, you'll be able to see that this appears in the entity editor over here. And that's really the power of widget properties. You don't then need to go back into the code at all. You just need to update what's going on over here. So now that I've created that property, let's use it in the HTML of my widget. I'm not going to need my h1 here or my div here. I'm not going to need those because I'm just going to use the div class sign, which is the general sort of bounding box of my art widget. I'm just going to change the background image of that so that it can show my image. To do that, I'll go back to this documentation here, and I'll just copy this data bind style background image URL attribute, paste that in between just before this greater than tag here, greater than symbol, and then I'm going to add equals, and I'm going to put in between quote marks the name of the property that I want this background image to use as its source URL. So we're going to use two open parentheses, Then I'm going to refer to the properties bag. So this properties here. So properties dot, and the name of the property I want to refer to, which is image URL with the capital U. Then it's just two closing parentheses, and I'll save that. And you'll see nothing has happened yet. So now let's go and get a URL for one of our images. I'm going to go back to create.crayta.com and grab the image that I want to use. I'll select this one here. Actually, no, I'll select this one. That one. I prefer this one. Okay, so now back in the game with the widget selected, I can now paste that image over here in the image URL. Wait a couple of seconds and I should see the image pop up. So there we go. I've got a little piece of artwork in my game. Now to move on to this little widget underneath. So this one was really focusing on the image, and the one underneath is going to be the title of it. So this widget is my art sign widget, and at the moment this is pretty much as standard, except I've changed a couple of the CSS properties so that I've changed the color and I've changed the font. So firstly, let's have a look at changing this the size of the text underneath here, because I think that's a little bit too big. So if we move that to 8, that changes the text size, and it's doing that because we've got this data bind style font size, and then it's grabbing hold of properties.text size, which is the default property that's already there. So I'm actually going to use that, and I'm going to keep it as it is. But what I want to do is, rather than me having to update what's within the text by changing my data model in the JS, and that could be quite laborious because I'd need to make a Lua script to update the JS data model, and then if I wanted to reuse this, then it would need a different script to send through a property to update the data model. Rather than doing it that way, which we just don't need to do anymore, I'm going to add a new property, and the name is going to be title, and the type is going to be text, and end property tag. I'm also going to add another one for the subtitle. Just realized I've spelled title wrong. Whoops. This one's going to be just text, and the type is text. So I'm just moving my JS model. Property. Okay. I'm just moving my JS model, which I create down here, and instead of it being data and then those properties, I'm going to create it. I'm going to use these two properties instead. So I've saved this widget, and now you can see that I've got the two properties. Properties have popped up over here in the entity editor. But even if I change those, nothing will happen. So even if I change this sign title to be walk blank, which is the game, nothing has updated, and that's because we need to use these. And so at the moment, within my HTML, I have the H1, which is referring to data.title. So that's referring to this thing down here. And in fact, if I change this text, it will update the title. But I don't want it to be data.title referring to this thing down here. I want it to be properties.title referring to this thing up here. So let's change that data to properties. And while we're there, let's do the same for the one below. So I've called my two properties.title, properties.text. And so I've replaced those within my HTML here, saved it, and let's see whether that's updated. Yep, so now we have walk the plank, which is the title I've put down here in the property. Let's also add some text to give a little bit of more understanding. So this was from an obstacle course. Quick. This was from an obstacle guide. There we go. And you can see that that's now updated, updated that widget down there. And what's really cool is that this whole thing, including the light and the two widgets, is a template. So if I select the template, copy that with Control C, paste it with Control V, and then let's move that along a little bit, I should be able to now add another image. So go to my bank of images over here, and let's go something a little bit different. Let's get this jungle train wreckage thing and put that in my artwork. So we're going to select the art widget, change the image URL in the asset properties. And there we go. Done that one. And let's change the title. So this one's called Sinister Factory. And this was from the Slippery Physics. There we go. So my gallery is well underway. I've now got 2 pieces of art and I can continue to make more very, very easily now, just because I've got this template all set up with a couple of widgets with some properties in them that I can easily change in the entity editor. Hopefully this has been an interesting and useful tutorial on widget properties. I think it's great to see it in context, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how you use widget properties in Crayta.